Ooh, a spicy question. I
because
love
the writing is sort of everything, right? Like you kind of can fix plot holes, but if the writing is
so some readers love that, and some readers are like, "But I wanted more of this." So it's kind of a gamble.
Hello and welcome back to the Right and Wrong podcast. With me today is the winner of the Comedy Women in Print Prize 2023, Silvia Saunders. Hello.
Hi, Jamie. It's always nice to be introduced as a winner of something.
Well, what's even more impressive about that is you're a winner before you've even been published. So I think the best place to start off is the novel, which is not out as of recording this. Your debut, it's coming up very, very soon. Homesick.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about it.
So, Homesick is the story of Mara. She's a woman in her mid-20s from a small town. She's living in London. She loves living in London. She has a long-term partner who she's very happy with. She has a job that she enjoys, but she's living in a house share, which is making her quite miserable. And then, lo and behold, she unexpectedly inherits enough cash to get her on the property ladder, which she was never expecting. And she assumes that all of her problems will be solved. But they are not. Her long-term boyfriend has no interest in moving into the house with her. Her best friend is born and raised in London and is finding it sort of hard to swallow that Mara is now in this position that she herself might not ever be in. And then once Mara moves into her new flat, she becomes very fixated with both sets of her neighbours and starts comparing her life with theirs, which causes other problems. Yeah, so that's the gist of it. It's
so relatable. The especially, I'm just thinking of the neighbours thing. As soon as you move somewhere and you're suddenly like, let's see where my neighbours are at. Let's see what they're doing with themselves.
For sure.
It's a great pitch. I always have to ask when it's. People always say with a debut novel, it's often the sort of closest to the author in terms of like their own experience. And obviously you live in London. You're a lot of the kind of, the atmosphere is going to be drawn from your own experience here. But how much of the actual story is like from things that you've lived through?
I think I took a lot of inspiration from things that I have experienced for sure, but also just lots of my friends who live in cities have been in these kind of situations. And I am from a small town in the Midlands. It's not that small. I'm from a town in the Midlands where a lot of my school friends were able to put deposits down on houses and things with stairs and gardens and things that we can only dream of. And of course, our parents have just been in completely different situations when they were our age. And I've just always found that an interesting topic. Me and my friends talk about that a lot. And there's a lot of anecdotes that you can use, especially about neighbours, as you said. So, yeah.
Okay. So was this story sort of born more out of that kind of the intrigue of like everyone's worried about where they're at in life and that's kind of, especially in UK culture, that's kind of intrinsically tied to where you are in terms of living space and property?
Yes. I mean, it's also not a coincidence that I started writing this story in, I think, the first paragraph I wrote in January 2021. So it was very COVID-y. And we were all in our homes a lot. And our living arrangements could quite easily take over our lives at that period of time. A lot of us weren't going into offices. So, yeah, I feel it was something that was playing heavily on my mind and on the minds of lots of my peers as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We were all feeling a bit trapped at that point. So I can see the direct correlation between the setup here and that. And like I said, this is the novel with which you won the Comedy Women in Print Prize.
Yes.
Congratulations. Awesome achievement. When you were writing this, were you thinking that you were writing a comedy?
No. not at all. Really not at all. It's in theory, it's quite dark. There's a lot of dark topics in the book. A big theme is male mental health. Her partner is struggling quite badly with depression. She is grieving. There's lots of things that aren't really very funny. So it was a friend who sent me the link to enter. And initially I thought it might not be appropriate to enter this book. But then I just thought, well, my friend obviously thinks it's funny, and surely it should just be down to the judges to decide. If it's not funny, it won't do well. So I gave it a go. And also it was free to enter, which is increasingly rare for literary competitions. So I genuinely thought, well, I've got nothing to lose. I might as well. It's
so interesting how often I think authors get this a lot, where they're just writing a story, and then at various different stages on their kind of journey, they're told that, okay, yeah, well, we're going to package this and market this as this genre. Yes. And they sort of say, oh, I didn't realize it was that genre. That's fine though.
Yes, that happens a lot. That really does happen a lot. The genre thing is interesting, isn't it? I think in theory, mine falls into the umbrella of women's fiction, women's contemporary fiction. But like, what does that really mean? Like, boys are allowed to read it. They might even enjoy it.
I try to not use the description of women's fiction, because it does feel outdated to me.
I think so, but it is still bandied about. You would be surprised.
Yeah. Because, I mean, from a marketing perspective, it still means something. But I just think there are better ways of describing stories other than they have a female protagonist and is written by a woman.
100%. Completely agree.
Let's get back onto you. I'd love to rewind a bit, dial it back, and hear about how your kind of writing adventures started and the steps that you kind of went along the way to get you here where you are now, kind of just about to publish your first novel. So do you remember when you first decided that writing a novel, publishing a book, that was something that you wanted to do?
Yes. I was living in Paris. I did, after my undergrad degree, I went and lived in Paris for a year as an au pair. Okay. So I wrote a very thinly disguised account of an au pair living in Paris, which ended up being about 100,000 words long. But essentially, it was a blog. I just gave the main character a different name, but it was me. And actually, I worked on that for a really long time. So I think that was in 2014 or 2013. And I worked on that for quite a few years. And it ended up being a lot shorter than 100,000 words, thankfully. And I bought a writers and artists yearbook, and I went through with the highlighter, and I was super trigger happy and sent it to quite a lot of agents. And actually, I got loads of really nice replies, which I think gave me a false sense of what it's actually like to submit a manuscript. Yeah. They were all obviously rejections, but some were really kind rejections. And before recording this, I just checked my inbox so I could be factually correct. My very first rejection was in January 2016, and it was actually a handwritten it was feedback about the novel. So
oh wow, okay,
yeah. So I've been submitting for a long time. It's taken me quite a long time, and then I eventually realised that book wasn't going to get anywhere, and then I wrote book 2, which I really believed in again. I'm always so hopeful. And I got a lot less interest for that one. Then I thought maybe I should take this a bit more seriously. So I went part-time at work, and I did a master's at Goldsmiths in creative writing, which I really, really enjoyed. And I met lots of people who are still my friends now. And I wrote book 3, and I really thought that was going to be the one that broke through.
Uh-huh.
And actually, I was in touch with an agent the whole way through the course. So about 18 months, she'd spotted an extract that I had written and got in touch with me, which I don't think happens very often. So I sort of thought, that's it, we're in. And she saw lots of different versions of that novel. And when I sent her the final section, she said, you know what, I don't think I'm going to be able to go ahead with this. So that was really hard. That was really hard.
That must be crushing.
So crushing, because I really had put all of my hopes into that. And we got on really well. She was a really nice person.
Mm-hmm.
So which book am I up to? That's book 3.
That was book 3, yeah. Was that while you were doing the MA at Goldsmiths?
So yes. I submitted a section of that as my final piece. And I think the course did teach me a lot, but I don't actually know if I would recommend doing a formal course like that. First of all, because they are really expensive. And second of all, because I sort of think you can do that same sort of work just by being in a writing group and having trusted readers. It depends if you can find that organically or not. So, yeah, I mean, realistically, I think I had a bit of a break after that because I did lose confidence. And then I started writing Homesick, which wasn't called Homesick at the time.
Okay.
But I took all of the stress away from it and I just wrote something that I was always looking forward to getting back to. It felt like I was writing something relevant and true to me. And I think that was maybe what the difference was, or maybe it was the practice from all the other books. I'm not sure.
Did you not get that feeling with the previous 2 novels?
No, I did. I always get that feeling. But I got that feeling again, let's say.
Okay, good. Good.
Yes. And then I did actually do another course. I did the Curtis Brown creative course, which did get me out of the slump that I was in, for sure. It was just overwhelmingly positive. Everybody wanted to help each other. We were actual friends. We were spending time together in the pub after the course. We stayed in touch afterwards. And then with a few of the people from the course, I think there were 5 of us, including me, that had finished manuscripts and wanted feedback on those. And I had never shared a full novel with anyone apart from hundreds of agents when I was submitting.
Yeah.
So we sort of treated it like a reading group. So I think we did it once a month and we would share our whole book, and then we would do a Zoom and give feedback on each other's novels. And that was so helpful. Yeah, I'm a quick writer and a very slow editor, and I don't think I'm very good at editing. So that helped me be a lot more focused with what the story actually needed. And I think that was maybe the first time I did real proper edits, so structural edits and sort of rethinking endings, and it made the book immeasurably better.
Okay, that's a lot of editing to do from feedback from just a reading group, not like a editor at a publisher or an agent.
Yeah, and I think it was helpful for me because I genuinely trusted the people in the group. They were my friends, but they were quite new friends, which I think was helpful because they weren't just going to pat me on the head and say, well done, you're very clever. They actually wanted to help me make the book better. So I think that was what I needed at the moment.
Okay, so having just said that you probably wouldn't recommend doing the MA.
Yes.
And then you did the Curtis Brown course. Would you recommend the Curtis Brown course?
Yes, because it was a lot more practical advice.
Okay, right.
It was more focused on, do you want to make writing a career? Which sounds maybe a bit cold, but it wasn't. It's not. It's also very creative. but they bring agents in, you get to talk to them. It sort of brings away this like veil of like, they're so untouchable and I'd be so privileged to even be in a room with one. It's just normal, very normal people who are also happy to speak to you. And they taught things like how to write a cover letter. Just things like you don't need to throat clear when you're submitting something. You don't have to say, oh, thank you so much for taking the time and things like that. You can just pitch. Like you're allowed to just pitch your book and be proud of it. So yes, I would recommend something like that if that's in somebody's reach. Obviously that's another cost. So it depends if someone is able to do that or not. But I was fortunate in that I could do that at that time, and it paid off for me in the end.
Yeah, I've had a few people on who have done that course, and people do speak very highly, specifically of the Curtis Brown course. Do they do a thing at the end of that where you do meet a group of agents, or your manuscripts get published in like a document which goes out to agents?
Well, this was a point of contention because when I did the course, it was still a bit COVID-y. So they didn't do the cocktail party thing that they usually do. So we were all devastated about that. But yes, they do send out a sort of compilation of people's extracts to various agents within C&W and Curtis Brown.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
But you're not with an agent from either of those. You're with Rachel Yo. So
yes.
So at what point did Rachel come on the scene?
Well, so after doing the course, I worked on the edits for Homesick for quite a long time. And then I did a much more focused submission to just a handful of agents.
Okay.
And it was, I guess, simultaneously, I also entered the Comedy Women in Print prize. Yes, is that the right timeline? Yes. And so I was lucky in that I can't remember the exact dates now, but for example, say I started submitting to agents in October, the prize had started in November, and then I found out quite quickly that it had been longlisted, so I was able to get back in touch with the agents who were talking to me and to tell them that, which I think helps them prioritize which ones they're going to read.
Yeah.
And then when I was shortlisted, I was able to nudge again. And then I found myself in the position where I had a few agent offers, and I had this very exciting week where I was meeting up with agents and they were talking about my book and the plan to the book. And yeah, I was able to choose which I'd never thought would be available to me. And Rachel was a very clear yes from the start. As soon as I met her, I thought, yes, I can work with you. And I'd be very glad to, yeah.
What was the, because I've asked agents this, and so I've got it from an agent's point of view. What was it like for you, and without naming any names other than Rachel, what was it like for you being sort of having a number of agents approach you and say, I would love to represent you? How did you kind of divvy that up? Did you arrange to meet with all of them, or what happened?
It was surreal. I'm London based, so I was able to actually go into the offices and meet.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. I thought it would be important for it to feel organic and for me to feel I could regularly speak to the person at length about writing. So that was the main thing I was looking for, I think. Mm-hmm. It's weird. It's sort of like a speed dating situation, but for your career. Yeah, but it was not a hard decision to make. It just felt like the right call.
Did they all sort of pitch different directions they thought the book might go, in the same way that editors do when they're in an auction?
A little bit, but by the time I had signed with Rachel, we were a couple of days away from the QUIP results, which were done in person. So I'd already done well in the competition. I was shortlisted at the stage that I signed with Rachel. So it wasn't quite as straightforward as that, because there was always this thing of, if you do win, the publishing deal is already happening. So yeah, I didn't quite have that. I've spoken to other debuts who did have that experience, but it wasn't quite like that for me, because there was a speculative sort of question mark over, okay, you might be publishing with HarperCollins anyway.
Right, because of the prize.
Because the prize was the publishing deal.
Mm-hmm.
So that if I were to win, that wouldn't have been a negotiable. I mean, I didn't have to take it, but I don't know why I wouldn't have. That would be...
Nah, I don't want your publishing deal.
Yeah,
actually.
no thanks.
Thanks.
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting as well from an agent's perspective, because it's like, you signed before you won though, right?
3 days before, 2 or 3 days before.
Okay. In some ways, it's better that happened, because you might have been like questioning things if you'd already won and then you signed.
Well, yes, and it's nice because I have submitted for so many years and to so many different people. It was like, okay, Rachel actually really, really wants to work with me, and it's not just because of the prize, and she sees what I'm trying to do. So, I mean, even if someone had wanted to sign with me just because of the prize, obviously I would have done that. But yeah.
Yeah. No, I understand. I mean, the prize is a 1-book deal, I presume.
Yes.
Okay, so you and Rachel will be going on submission, or are on submission with something new?
Not yet. We're not quite at that stage yet, but I have written the next book.
Okay.
So I'm currently editing that.
Okay, very cool. I'd love to talk about that maybe a little bit more in a bit. But before we go to the desert island, I just wanted to ask, so the book's not out yet. This has obviously been a dream of yours for many, many years.
Yes.
Does it feel real yet?
I have a stack of the books in the flat now with me.
Okay.
So I sort of have to accept that it's happening, and it's a real thing. But I sort of feel I won't truly believe it until I know someone has paid for a copy, if that makes sense. Like someone who doesn't know me. So because friends and family have very kindly pre-ordered. Well, they've told me they have. I think they have. Yeah. So I think if I ever happen to see one in the wild, that will be a real moment of, oh, okay, somebody actually just saw it and fancied it and paid for it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, also just seeing it in a shop, I guess. If you walk into a bookshop and you see it on a shelf and you'll think, wow, it's right there. That's me.
Yes,
that's my name.
That will be wild. I can't wait. Cannot wait.
Amazing. So, the desert island.
Yes.
If I were to maroon you on a desert island with a single book, which book do you hope that it would be?
So I have actually mulled this over for about 6 months, or since we decided we were going to do this conversation. So okay. I've gone through all the different options, and I'm going to be a little bit cheeky and ask if I could maybe have the whole of the Elena Ferrante Brilliant Friend quartet sort of bound together as one.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't buy it bound together as one, I'm sure you could figure out how to glue it together.
Stick it together.
Yeah, you wouldn't be the first person to have done something like that.
Okay, yeah. I feel that's what I would do, please. I feel that there is all of life in there, and that would also be long enough to keep me going for a little while, a few days.
Okay, very cool. A great choice. Also, sticking 4 books together, smart choice in terms of length. Love that.
It's the only way.
Exactly. Next up, we are going to chat a bit about Silvia's writing process, whether it's evolved as a result of finishing and publishing her first novel. That will all be in the extended episode available on Patreon. Maybe she'll listen to this podcast. She'll be like, wait, I need this book about the au pair.
Rachel, get in touch. I'll send it over.
Amazing. It's about time we wrap up this interview, but it's been so fun chatting with you, Silvia. It's been so interesting hearing about your kind of experiences and how you've kind of made it through publishing. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having having me. I'm a genuine fan of the podcast, so this was very exciting.
Awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. For everyone listening, Homesick is out on the 30th of January. So depending on when you're listening to this, you can pre-order it or order it. If you want to keep up with what Silvia is doing, you can follow her on Instagram at Silv Saunders. To support the podcast, like, follow and subscribe. Join the Patreon for ad-free extended episodes and check out my other podcast, The Chosen Ones and Other Tropes. Thanks again, Silvia, and thanks to everyone listening. We will catch you on the next episode.